Good evening, everybody. Just thought I'd jump in here and make a video about some stuff going on in the news, particularly here in the Richmond, Virginia area. If any of my friends out there who are on Facebook or just check the news in Richmond on a daily basis, you know what I'm about to talk about. On Facebook, you have TV6, TV8, TV12, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and some other news pages, but those are the ones primarily here in the Richmond area. And it seems a day can't go by that we don't hear another story about another Richmond citizen or two or three being shot and wounded, shot and killed. Sometimes they're the intended target. Sometimes, as happened recently, where a little girl was killed in her apartment by a stray bullet. Sometimes they're just collateral damage because the shooter was shooting at someone else and just throwing lead downrange, didn't seem to care where the bullets were going, and some innocent person gets shot. And along with that comes the usual musings from the left about, oh, it's guns, oh, too much violence, oh, systemic racism, oh, the oppression, oh, the biggest threat to black people in this country is white supremacist racism. Now, some of you are going to hear me say that, and you're going to, oh, Floyd, that's silly. Why would you even say something like that? That's not true. Well, I know it's not true, and some of you know it's not true. You might want to tell Joe Biden and his minions that it's not true because he said it and his people echo it and it's in the news all the time. It's white supremacist, white racism, systemic racism. Those are the biggest problems facing the black man in this country today. And you know me, if you haven't figured out anything else about me, I will point out hypocrisy and double standards when I see them. And I don't care which side it's coming from. Okay? I'm not locked into a party like some of you are. I don't care for any of them. All right? I don't toe anybody else's line. I think for myself. And if I think something's wrong, I'm going to tell you what I think about it. So, the questions that have to be asked first, when you're reading these news stories or you're hearing them on TV, what's one of the things that jumps out at you? Now, as someone who used to be a private investigator, as someone who had hoped at one time to be a police officer, I noticed certain things. And one of them is when you're given a description of a perpetrator or a description of a victim, there are certain things you tell people. For example, if I'm a police officer pulling up on a scene, somebody's been shot, they're laying on the ground, ambulance is on the way, I'm asking some of the witnesses, what did the guy that did the shooting look like? Well, he was about 6 feet tall and 180 pounds, and he was wearing blue jeans and a white shirt. Anything else you think might be helpful? Like, oh, I don't know, the race of the perpetrator. So if it was a white guy that shot this person on the ground, but I'm running down the street looking for somebody 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, blue jeans and a white shirt, and there's a black guy standing on the corner with those clothes on and meeting that description, guess who I'm going to stop and talk to? Now, you may not like hearing this stuff. In fact, I know a lot of you don't, especially the leftists out there. Oh, you're racist, Floyd. How can you talk about that? Because I'm white, obviously. Yes, I do identify as white, and I do identify as male. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. You need to know who you're dealing with, who you're looking for. Have you ever noticed, though, in the news stories, the only time, and I'm challenging you to look and notice it if you haven't already. The only time the news mentions race is if a white guy shoots a black guy. That's the only time. If it's a black guy shooting a black guy, they don't mention it. That's not important to the story. So you're reading this news story, one guy shoots another guy, and you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, what was that all about? Drug deal gone bad? Robbery? Argument? Rival lovers? I mean, what's going on here? But the news doesn't want you to know that. They don't care about that unless it's the white guy shooting a black guy. Then they lead with the race. That's the first thing out of their mouths. That's the first sentence of the story. White guy shoots black guy. Well, let's go back to Joe Biden and his ilk, the left, the progressives, the liberals in this country. BLM, Antifa, pick one. The biggest threat to the safety of a black man in this country is white supremacist racism. Okay, let's run with that for a moment. Knowing what we know about the news media in this country, knowing that they're leftists, knowing that they promote the leftist agenda. If there were white guys out here riding around in pickup trucks or whatever, Confederate flags flying from the back of the truck, shooting black people in the inner cities in this country, don't you think we'd see more news stories about that? Do you think the media would cover that? Do you think they'd spend a lot of time on that? You know the answer. Don't act like you don't know it. And when I say these things, I'm talking to you leftists out there. I'm talking to you liberals who just refuse to open your eyes and deal with reality. The fact of the matter is, the biggest threat to a black man in this country is another black man. Oh, I can just feel the knees jerking now. Oh, Floyd, you can't say that. How dare you speak on that? What do you know about it? You're white. You don't live in that community, blah, 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 blah. Well, you're right. I am white, and you're right. I do not live in that community. So I don't have to deal with it on a daily basis like some people do. But I do know what I see, and I do know what I hear. And I do remember owning 3 supermarkets in Richmond, Virginia's South Side, which were at one time lower middle class white neighborhoods, and the demographics changed over the years till they became mostly lower to lower middle class black neighborhoods. We also had to deal with, a couple of our stores had to deal with a lot of Section 8 housing nearby. So I am familiar with a good deal of the black community. We had a lot of black employees. Most of our customers were black. I've heard the conversations. I've seen the attitudes. I have a pretty good grasp of what's going on. Now, again, I don't live in that community, so I'm not dealing with it on a daily basis. Certainly not anymore, since we've sold all the stores years ago. But not that much has changed, I can tell you that. But don't believe me. That's fine. If you don't want to believe me, I get it. You don't want to have your view of the world changed or challenged by some white guy. Go to the communities, talk to the people who live there, ask them. I bet they'll tell you what's going on. But let's reinforce what I just said with some statistics, shall we? Especially all you leftists who keep telling us we should pay attention to the science. We should look at the science. All right, well, statistics are a part of science. So let's look at this. Now, this is from Reuters. This was dated July 17, 2020. All right. Fact check, false data on U.S. racial murder rates by Reuters staff. All right, let's look along here. According to the FBI's expanded homicide data from 2018, and by the way, 2018, you know as well as I do, statistics get updated continually. So we may not have today's statistics, but we have statistics up to a certain point where they've gathered all the information and looked at the numbers and compiled them, okay? So this goes back to 2018. The most recent report of this kind, Reuters was able to find 80.7% of the murders of white people were committed by white offenders. All right. So biggest problem a white person has in this country is another white person, apparently. But that shouldn't surprise anybody. And again, I'm not saying that white people don't kill white people. I'm not saying that white people don't kill black people or vice versa. You can switch it around. What I am saying is when you look at the numbers, who is more likely to do it? And to whom are they more likely to do it? Am I wrong? Should I not look at it? Look at these statistics? Should I not bring this up? Continuing, while 15.5% of the murders of white people were committed by black offenders. 15.5% versus 80. Okay. The social media post also alleges, now this is referring to a particular social media post they're writing about, also alleges white offenders committed 2% of the murders of black victims, according to the FBI's data. 8% of the reported murders of black people were committed by white offenders. Now, this is the FBI's data. Mr. and Mrs. Leftist, do you or do you not trust the FBI? That's the next question you have to ask yourself. And given the history of the FBI, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, I would forgive you for not trusting them. 8% of the reported murders of black people were committed by white offenders. 8%. 8% of the reported murders of black people were committed by white offenders. Now, I want you to think about what I'm about to say. These are FBI statistics. While 88.9% were killed by black offenders. So 88.9% of black people were killed by other black people, while only 8% of black people were killed by white offenders. I'd have to say that white supremacist racism's got some work to do, huh? They got some catching up they got to do. But don't believe me. Don't trust me. That's fine. Look it up yourself. You can find this stuff. You can look it up if you want to. Moving on. All right. Now, this is from Compare Camp. It's a statistics website. It takes statistics from all sorts of things that go on in the country, and it brings you the statistics and shows you what they mean and where they get it from. Let's go to black on black crime statistics. Now, I'm going to get a little closer here so I can read this small print. Rather than racial bias, two bigger factors in the staggering rates of black on black violence have surfaced. Excuse me. Familiarity and proximity. According to the FBI's annual crime report in 2018, most murder victims are acquaintances of the suspects in cases where the relationship between both parties was identified. Crimes committed by friends and family also exceeded these perpetrated by strangers. So you're more likely to be killed by someone you know, according to the FBI statistics. From a risk management standpoint, there would be less of a struggle, and the threat level is more or less calculated in harming people one is familiar with. This doesn't mean that strangers pose less of a threat compared to friends and peers, which is certainly not the case. But what the data really conveys is for us to be more vigilant, especially in reading social cues. And here's some bullet points, no pun intended. According to the 2018 National Crime Victimization Survey, 70.3% of the violent incidents suffered by Black victims were committed by Black offenders. 70.3%. Next point. Of the 6,000 homicide cases in 2015, where the FBI had known the ethnicity of the victim and the killer, 2,380 were Black victims accosted by Black killers. 2,574, on the other hand, were whites killed by whites. So in 2015, more whites killed other whites than Blacks killed other Blacks. But you don't hear that in the news, do you? The only time the news wants to talk about it is when it's a white guy killing a Black guy. This represents an 8% increase from 2014. And again, you have to go back because they have to take the time to compile all these stats. The proportion of Black on Black homicides to the number of Black people killed was at 89.3% in 2015. The first time since the dawn of the 21st century that the rate fell below 90%. The first time it fell below 90%. All right, so again, what's the point I'm trying to make with all this, in case you still haven't figured it out? We've got Joe Biden, BLM, Antifa, leftist politicians in general, and activists of every sort telling you and me and the rest of America that the biggest threat to the Black man in this country is the white man. White supremacist racism, white supremacist terrorism. I can find the videos for you. I can show you where Joe Biden said it. I can show you where other people have said it. You know it. You don't need me to do that because you've seen it. You heard it yourself. In fact, many of you out there, you leftists out there, agree with it. You will go, oh, you tell him, Joe, way to go. I'm glad he stayed awake long enough to get that out. So you know what I'm talking about. Don't pretend you don't. And yet, when you look at the statistics, and don't just go with the FBI, you can go city to city. Pick any major city in the United States of America, go to the police department's crime statistics, and you can look at it city to city. You don't need to believe me, but you're not going to look, are you? You're just going to believe what Joe and the activists tell you to believe because it's easier that way. And it fits your worldview because you want to hate somebody. And rather than look within and ask yourself, what am I doing? Or what is my community doing? Or what is it about my culture that is causing this or allowing it to continue? You'd rather just point out, it's those white guys over there. It's the white people. White racism. Look, I'm not going to tell you there's not racism in this country. There certainly is. There's racism all across the planet. You're not going to go anywhere where you won't find it. But let's get back to what we're told daily in the news, that white people are the problem. The biggest threat to a Black man is white violence. But that's not true. And you know damn well it's not true, but you don't care because that doesn't help advance your agenda, does it? So let's get back to Richmond, Virginia. But you can extrapolate this out to any big city in America. It's happening all across the country. When you read these stories in Richmond, look at the neighborhoods. And again, I know what you're thinking. Oh, Floyd, you're such a racist. No, I've lived in Richmond all my life. I know the areas around Richmond. I know which ones are quote unquote Black communities and which ones aren't. So you can get mad at me if you want to for pointing this stuff out. I really don't care. People get mad at me all the time. You see my shirt? My opinion offended you? You should hear what I keep to myself. So if you want to be angry with me, fine. But by being angry with me and without looking at what the real issues are, what the real problems are, then nothing's going to get fixed. The problem will continue because you refuse to address the real issue. Ask yourself a series of questions. Number one, who is doing the shooting or / killing? Number two, who are the victims? Number three, what communities are they living in? Number four, why was the shooting done? Were they mad? Were they robbing? Was it a drug deal gone bad? Was it a territorial issue? You're selling drugs on my street corner? Whatever. Ask yourself, why? Why is this? You remember last year when the guy rode by the apartments over across from George Wythe High School in Richmond's South Side? And he just throwing lead down range, killed 2 people, a mother and her baby, and wounded 3 other people. And they weren't even the ones he was shooting at. Did anybody ever ask, who was he shooting at? Why was he shooting? Why did he feel it was necessary to just throw bullets down range without any concern for where they were going or who they might hit? No, it's guns. White systemic racism. That's why nothing changes. That's why nothing gets fixed. You want to blame it on anything and everything and everybody, but who's really at fault? When these shootings take place and there are witnesses, people do hear things and or see things. How helpful are you with the police as far as telling them, oh yeah, I saw who did it. Yeah, I saw the car he got in. Oh yeah, I got a license plate number. Think about it. Everybody's got those phones now with the camera. Everybody's pointing their camera at everything. And, you see 2 people fighting on a street corner. Instead of calling the police or trying to break up the fight, everybody wants to videotape it. Let's get it on film. Let's get it on social media. So don't tell me people don't see or know what's going on. They do. They just don't want to drop a dime on a brother. Well, because you don't want to drop a dime on a brother, the brothers keep killing each other. Why does this bother me? I'm a white guy. I don't live in those communities. Why do I care? I care because I'm an American. I'm a Richmonder, native Richmonder. And things that are stupid, things that are unproductive bother me. Killing people because, oh, that guy, he called me a name. He disrespected me in front of all those people. So I'm going to have to shoot him now. Or he's on the wrong street corner. This is my territory. Pick a reason. They're all stupid unless somebody's actually attacking you and trying to harm you or trying to kill you or someone that you care about. Do you really have to go around shooting everybody that pisses you off? Hell, if I did that, good God, I would never, well, shit, I'd still be in jail or strapped into an electric chair somewhere. Grow up. Look around you. Look within. Look at the community you're in. What is causing these things? Why are they happening? Stop pointing over here and stop pointing over there and stop blaming everybody else when you know damn well where this problem is coming from, but you just refuse to address it. Because if you do address it, you might have to admit that you've been wrong about something, and we can't have that, can we? So ask yourself these questions. See what the answers are that you get. I mean, look, you can do it in the privacy of your own home. You don't have to do it where I can see or hear you doing it. If you're afraid that somebody might point out your hypocrisy or point out your double standards, then do it in the privacy of your own home. But be honest with yourself. Ask yourself these questions. See what your answers are. Then ask yourself, what can I do? What can I encourage my community to do? What can I do to help change the culture where we have accepted that this is okay? There are a lot of different questions you can ask, but you have to be willing to ask them. So when I read these news stories, yeah, there's a mix of anger and sadness in them, uh, especially when it's young people involved. I don't want to see some young kid get shot and killed, whether he was doing something wrong or whether it was some innocent little girl laying in her bed at home. There's got to be a better way. Wouldn't you agree? And no, taking guns from law abiding citizens like me, who haven't been driving through the city shooting people, is not going to fix the problem. We already have thousands, I said thousands of gun laws in this country, local, state, and federal. Hadn't stopped any of it, hadn't done a damn thing to fix any of it. So there must be something else at play here, wouldn't you think? What is it? What can be done to change it? Who should take the lead in this? What kind of role can you play? I don't know. Call me crazy. I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I know the answers, or at least I think I do. Sometimes I'm still scratching my head and wondering what's the answer. Maybe you could do something to help with that. In the meantime, don't expect the shootings to stop anytime soon, because everything the government is doing, everything the communities are doing, everything the activists are doing is not addressing the problem. And until that does happen, nothing's going to change.